Equine gastric ulceration syndrome, or EGUS, is thought to affect at least 90% of thoroughbred and standardbred horses in race training. Despite this high prevalence, only one drug is currently approved by the FDA for its management, omeprazole. During exercise, abdominal pressure increases and the stomach is compressed. This forces hydrochloric acid secreting by the glandular distal part of the stomach up into contact with the unprotected, non-glandular proximal third, where acid exposure causes inflammation, erosion, and ulceration. The primary treatment objective is therefore to maintain stomach pH between the normal 4 and 5 by suppressing gastric acid secretion. Omeprazole achieves this by blocking parietal cells of the mucosa from exchanging hydrogen and potassium ions. In the luminal secretory membrane, it's converted into an activated sulfonamide form, which inhibits the hydrogen-potassium ATPase pump through irreversible binding. Numerous clinical trials have proved the drug's safety and efficacy in the treatment of ulceration, as well as its efficacy in prevention of ulcer recurrence. To date, only 4 studies have been carried out to specifically assess omeprazole's use in preventing ulcers from occurring in the first place. The 3 largest published studies were conducted by the same group, McClure and White et al., in 2003, 2005, and 2007. Each involved the recruitment of several hundred racehorses across the United States and Canada. The first 2 papers each detail randomized, controlled, dose response and dose confirmation prospective clinical trials. Both investigations found that a dose of 1 mg per kilogram per day was the most effective, with over 80% of treated horses remaining ulcer-free, compared to around 10% in horses that received a sham dose. Whilst these first studies were conducted over 28 days, a third follow-up study found that administering the drug over a period of 8 days was equally effective. The most recent study, conducted in Japan in 2012, evaluated ulcers in 62 younger thoroughbreds over 28 days, and found that omeprazole also decreased occurrence to a 10th. The most significant risk factors for ulceration are thought to be exercise intensity and duration. Poor nutrition and prolonged fasting are also thought to be ulcerogenic. The 2005 and 2012 studies were conducted at a single facility where horses were fed, stabled, and exercised identically, while the other 2 studies were conducted in multiple facilities with a lack of standardized diet and exercise that may have varied. Overall, the studies demonstrated efficacy in horses undertaking intensive professional training regimes, as well as lighter recreational activities, and in young thoroughbreds commencing their training. The studies involved standardbreds, thoroughbreds, and quarter horses of both sexes aged between 1 and 10 years. It's currently thought that age, sex, and breed have little effect on ulcer development compared to exercise, so these results are likely to be broadly applicable across many horse groups. Though generally sound, in some papers the methodologies don't provide sufficient detail. It's not always stated whether the endoscopist and the drug administrators were blinded, what percentage of horses began the trial with ulcers, whether any adverse effects were associated with omeprazole administration, and whether they were on any medication such as NSAIDs prior to the trial. In the 2003 study, there may be a conflict of interest as the trial was supported by the manufacturers of the paste that was being tested. Despite these shortcomings, taken together, the studies provide strong evidence that omeprazole has a significant preventive effect, with no evidence to the contrary. No adverse effects have been noted in foals and horses, even after prolonged administration at up to 10 times the recommended treatment dose. No adverse health outcomes were reported in any of the trials assessing prevention, so in my opinion, evidence for use of omeprazole for prevention is sound. Further studies may be indicated to compare omeprazole efficacy to other protective measures such as feeding an acid buffering diet.